Hello, everybody. The disclaimer. Hello, hey Joshua. Yeah, I'm early, Miss Queen. How you doing? Glory, hallelujah. For all of us that's been saying, what is this? What has the people in the world come to when we allow children to make a decision on I wake up, mama, daddy, I decide I want to be a boy, and the girl, I want to be a girl now, and people get on the bandwagon. I mean, these kids, they're kids. They're kids. Like, they ain't even graduated from high school. They have not paid any bills. They are kids. Kids that was born a boy or a girl, and they go to the parents and say, I think I want to be a girl or I want to be a boy, and they jump all on the doggone bandwagon and say, it's okay. We support you. We gonna let you get hormone treatments. We gonna support you. And I'm like, what? What? Like, are we serious right now? We allowing kids to say that we, you know, I woke up and I want to be a girl. First of all, God made you what you was born with. And instead of embracing something, we should have been saying, okay, maybe you need to get some therapy, some counseling. But no. You got people like the Wades who allow their child, their child was Dwayne Wade, his son. They didn't give a damn about what the mother thought. The woman that gave birth to him, you know, the woman who Dwayne Wade dogged out, who when he didn't have nothing, her and her family took Dwayne Wade in, and he got to Hollywood and lost his rabbit ass mind, forgot all the where he come from. Then you got Gabrielle Union, the stepmammy, who's pushing it, which it wasn't her child. It wasn't her child. So I always say that these people did this mess for money and fame. They exploited their kids. They pimped their kids out. This is what people was pushing. And they got on the bandwagon. Any parent that went along with this, you had no morals. You have no values. You have nothing. Because there is no way a child can tell you something like this, and you are okay with it. It's plain wrong. It's wrong. It's a bad spirit, a bad demon, and it's wrong. So I want to thank the American College of Pediatricians issuing a statement condemning child gender transition. I'm going to let you listen to what they said. Hey, East Dad, let me tell you something. I am so glad people are standing up for what's right. I commend these people. Hold on. Well, y'all know I always have technical difficulties. No matter how I have it.
Tell me today, can you commit here today that your department will not withhold federal funding from hospitals, doctors who refuse to provide the gender affirming care that you are, mandating if it violates their religious beliefs?
So now, Congresswoman, recognize you're going somewhere completely different. First, you started talking about how a doctor should have the rights to not offer particular care. Then you stretch it out to provide for the system-wide services.
Yes, you've put out this guidance.
Very different.
You've put out this guidance, and doctors do need to know.
Yes.
What are you going to do if they refuse to provide this care?
A doctor, if that doctor has religious objections, that doctor under these rules is not required to offer the care.
Okay, so you're committing here today that you will not withhold federal funding.
Doctors don't get federal funding, ma'am.
But the hospitals do.
Okay, so now talk to me about the hospital.
Are you saying that the...
Don't confuse the two.
Okay,
a doctor is not a hospital.
But the doctors are working in these hospitals. Are you going to say today, are you committing that you will not withhold federal funding from those healthcare facilities?
If a healthcare facility is violating the law and not providing the service they're required to,
we
they are
knew
not
that
entitled
you
to the
would
resources.
Withdraw federal funding.
What happened is, hey Renee, a coalition of pediatricians, health policy groups, and conservative organizations is calling on medical professionals to stop promoting transgender medical treatment for children. The American College of Pediatricians and allied groups styling themselves as doctors protecting children have published a declaration urging mainstream American medical associations like the American Academy of Pediatricians to abandon support for so-called gender affirming care for transgender youth, as physicians, together with nurses, psychotherapists, and behavior health clinicians, other health professionals, scientists, researchers, public health, and policies professionals, we have serious concerns about the physical and mental health effects of the current protocols promoted for the care of children and adolescents in the United States who express discomfort with their biological sex. Affirming that sex is a biological characteristic and that medical decisions should not be based upon an individual's thoughts and feelings, including their self-professed gender identity. The groups assess, which is currently accepted as best practice treatments for gender dysphoria, is actually harmful for patients. Their view is disputed by a larger medical community, which has established that gender is a social construct, not an inborn biological reality, and their validation and affirmation of a person's internal self-identity are in their best interest. So what we have now is a bunch of people that's part of this American College of Pediatricians. They are saying that this is harmful to support these kids and assisting them with changing their sexual identity. Hey, Fakra, please hit the like button. Renee, hey, the realist. And so, they are saying that children under the age of 18 cannot make this type of decision. It's not right. It's not right. It is not right. You are born either a male or a female. And to keep promoting this transgender, allowing kids to change their sexual identity, giving them hormone pills, removing the sex parts that they were born with. They're saying that this is not good for the child. It's not good. It is not good. It's not good. And so,
Well, now there's a new study, and it's raising alarms about transgender medical treatment.
hold on.
Mayo Clinic researchers say puberty blockers have serious long-term impacts on growth, bone density, and fertility. And here's a quote. Some of the changes triggered by gender-affirming hormone therapy cannot be reversed. Others may require surgery to reverse.
So what they're saying now is you get...
This contradicts claims by trans activists who say treatments only pause puberty and buy time for transgender children to make decisions about who they'll be. Other countries like the UK have taken action. Doctors in the United Kingdom health system have banned the prescription of these types of treatment for children. Former Prime Minister Liz Truss weighed in recently.
Children have been taking this treatment in the UK and around the world, and they are potentially damaging their fertility, they're damaging their bodies. They don't understand the consequences of those decisions. And this has happened because...
Oh, darn it. Oh, boy. Hold on, y'all. So anyway, the moral of the story is they have come out now and they're saying kids should not be allowed to make this decision. They should not be allowed to get these hormone treatments because studies have shown that kids, their children, they get all of this work done and then they decide, well, I want to go back to being a boy, and it's too late. It's too late. How did we get to a point where we allow kids to do this? Lord have mercy. But let me, all the people that's been praying, saying that this ain't right, it is good to know that you got people saying, no, we're not going to go along with this. You know, we're not going. And see, it was a time that they were actually telling people, if you didn't allow the child to change their identity, they were going to jail the parents. Can you believe that? And it's awful. Like, yeah, Renee, their brains ain't even fully developed. Ain't nothing developed. And I decide, you know, that I want to get this type of surgery done. Hey, Chuck, hey, the Butt Files. I'm going to drop this link. How did we get to this point? How did all of these laws get passed where people had no rights over their kids? A child could say that I want to change my sexual identity. And if the parents didn't go along with it, then they were putting them in jail. They say this gender crisis emerged just as the internet and social media increasingly took hold of young minds. Where children were able to just wake up and say, I want to be a girl or a boy. And they were giving them what they call puberty blocking drugs. This is turning around, and I thank you. I thank the higher power in everybody that is coming out now. And they're saying that, this is not happening anymore. And like I said, they have come up in other countries to stop what they call the puberty blocker drugs. And this is a mess. They start giving these kids these drugs. Yeah, yeah. See, the puberty blockers is to delay the development of gender characteristics, including the growth of breast and facial hair. I mean, to think that we got this far with this. Like I said, I got Dwayne Wade picture up there with his son because they went all the way. How can a child tell you they want to be a boy or girl and you say, okay, and you go along with it? You start letting them take these hormone treatments to change a boy into a girl? They're saying now that youth, they have to wait until they're 18 before they can make this change. But see, while everybody was arguing, we learned about other things. These was the laws that was being passed, where if your child told you that I want to be a girl and you didn't go along with it, they were throwing parents in jail. Hold on. I'm gonna let y'all. I'm pulling up some more things for everybody to listen to. We've got to protect the children, y'all. We've got to
This opinion piece was written by Benjamin Ryan. Psychiatrists learned the wrong lesson from the gay rights movement. Advocates for puberty blockers don't have science on their side. Benjamin Ryan is an independent journalist and has been covering LGBTQ health for over 2 decades. 5 decades ago, the world's most powerful psychiatric association changed the course of LGBTQ civil rights history when it removed homosexuality from its influential Bible of mental health disorders. At annual meetings of the American Psychiatric Association during the early 1970s, activists and internal reformers compelled the association to host panels and discussions on the merits of the relevant research, fostering a rigorous debate about whether homosexuality should still be considered a pathology. The science won in 1974 and set in motion a parade of legal victories for the gay rights movement, including the right for same-sex couples to wed. APA members gather in New York on Saturday for this same crucial meeting. The summit should again serve as a watershed moment in the care of LGBTQ people. This time, the pressing question facing American psychiatrists is how best to treat children who are distressed about their gender. In response to emerging analyses of the available research, health officials in several European nations have sharply restricted the use of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones in this population, in some countries to research settings only. But the APA still endorses the use of these drugs as a frontline intervention for minors. In 1974, the science lined up neatly with the demands of gay rights activists. But today, the science of pediatric gender medicine is uncertain, so it doesn't back the cause of groups leading the contemporary LGBTQ civil rights movement in the United States. GLAAD has gone so far as to insist that the science is settled regarding pediatric gender transition. It is not. In fact, the field of pediatric gender medicine is woefully compromised by a critical lack of quality research. Evidence-based medicine experts insist that we simply do not know whether gender transition treatment is safe and effective for minors. Understandably, APA leaders, and other empathetic everyday people, are wary of repeating the mistakes of the past and are inclined to stand with LGBTQ advocates, particularly as conservative groups fight for all manner of restrictive laws that target kids who identify as transgender. During the past decade, nations across the globe saw a surge in children and adolescents with gender-related distress, a population with a high rate of other psychiatric conditions, autism, and self-harm. This phenomenon has occurred amid an overall crisis in youth mental health. It is not a betrayal of gender-distressed young people's complex needs to demand the highest possible quality of evidence to determine whether prescribing them medications that could rob them of their fertility and sexual function are in their best interest. It is the APA's responsibility, free from ideology or politics, to make such demands, which are, in fact, in service of these young people's well-being. The APA's signaling on best practices for the care of such young people is of paramount importance. The offices of psychiatrists and other mental health professionals are often the entry point into gender transition medicalization. And in U.S. gender clinics, a therapist typically must approve a minor's referral to an endocrinologist for puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones. The APA has been notably silent on a landmark report published last month that was commissioned by the British National Health Service. Called the Cass Review, it concluded that pediatric gender transition treatment is based on remarkably weak evidence. The report is supported by 7 independently conducted systematic literature reviews, the gold standard of scientific evidence. Their findings were in line with those of 6 previous such reviews, conducted by European and North American investigators and published since 2019. The program for the 2024 APA annual meeting lists only one panel that touches on pediatric gender transition treatment, titled Channeling Your Passion and Inner Outrage by Promoting Public Policy for Evidence-Based Transgender Care. The panel notably includes Jack Turbin, a University of California at San Francisco child psychiatrist, and a vocal supporter of broad access to gender transition treatment. This week, he lashed out at the Cass Review on X and asserted that the associated literature reviews scored some of the studies incorrectly. Turbin didn't mention the reviews deemed a few of his own widely referenced papers to be low quality. The APA's meeting has a proud history of transforming open debate over LGBTQ-related research and care, and should do the same for trans-identifying kids. This should include asking themselves whether LGBTQ activism that once enhanced the understanding of science about this population is now clouding it. The 1972 APA meeting included a panel featuring a gay psychiatrist who wore a gruesome costume mask and wig that disguised his identity. He opened his mouth and regaled a rapt crowd with his searing story about the agony of working from within the closet. At the 1973 APA meeting, one psychiatrist panelist proclaimed, "All my gay patients are sick," to which another replied, "All my straight patients are sick." This rejoinder pointed to a fatal flaw in the research that had supported considering homosexuality a mental illness. Those supposedly scientific papers were largely based on psychiatric patients, not the general gay public. Therefore, their conclusions were weak and inconclusive. The APA board was finally convinced. At the end of that year, it voted that homosexuality was not a mental disorder. The organization's full membership effectively ratified this decision when a majority voted down a referendum to overturn it on April 8, 1974. In March, I asked APA President Petros Lavounis, who like me is a gay man, if the organization was taking into consideration the recent review papers on pediatric gender medicine. "We do look very closely to international research," Lavounis, a psychiatrist, told me. "But this is something that has to also come through US channels before we finalize our opinion. Now is the time for rigorous and open scientific debate in the United States about this vital subject among the nation's psychiatrists. The APA needs to remember the power of its annual meeting to foster such a transformative free exchange of ideas. It needs to trade silence for science."
So yeah, like I said, I just found it amazing that people were going along with this. And so what they are saying, hey, my son, Zoo, DJ Chuck, Renee, East Dad, like, y'all gave these people an ability to be guinea pigs on children that was saying they wanted to be a girl and it was okay. Everybody jumped on the bandwagon, give them the drugs, let them change their identity. And these were children. 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 So all of these states now are saying, no, hold on, another article. See, they're banning all of this stuff in states. Everybody is trying to ban this gender.
This news story
Hold
was
on.
written by Casey Parks and Ann Marimo. Supreme Court allows Idaho to enforce ban on gender-affirming care for minors. The Supreme Court on Monday cleared the way for Idaho to broadly enforce a ban on gender-affirming medical care for minors, the first time the justices have intervened on the contentious issue of transgender health treatments. While the underlying case concerns the constitutionality of a ban on gender-affirming medical care for minors, the court's order did not address the merits of the issue, only whether the law could take effect for now. The state's restrictions will not immediately apply to the two transgender teens who sued the state. Idaho legislators passed the bill, called the Idaho Vulnerable Child Protection Act, last May. The law bans puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and certain surgeries for transgender adolescents. Idaho doctors who prescribe those treatments to transgender youth can face up to 10 years in prison. Soon after Idaho, Governor Brad Little, while Republican, signed the bill into law, two anonymous teen plaintiffs and their parents sued the state, and asked a judge to block the law while the suit moved through the courts. In December, U.S. District Judge B. Lynn Windmill, a Bill Clinton appointee, granted their motion and temporarily blocked the ban from taking effect. The state appealed, but the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit refused to stay the lower court's opinion. Idaho then asked the Supreme Court to limit the injunction to just the two plaintiffs, thereby letting the ban take effect against all other trans youth in Idaho. Plaintiffs suffer no harm at all, let alone irreparable harm, if the injunction applies to them but not to others, lawyers for the state wrote in legal filings. The plaintiffs' lawyers argued that limiting the injunction would out the teenage girls at the center of the suit. Because the law promises criminal repercussions for doctors, the only way the girls could receive care without a total injunction is if they reveal themselves as the lawsuit's plaintiffs to staff at doctors' offices and pharmacies every time they visited a doctor or sought to fill their prescriptions. That argument did not sway the court. The plaintiffs face no harm from the partial stay the state requests, wrote Justice Neil M. Gorsuch, who was joined by Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel A. Alito Jr. Even with it, the district court's preliminary injunction will operate to prevent state authorities from taking any action to interfere with their ability to access the particular drug treatments they seek. In a statement, lawyers from the American Civil Liberties Union and the ACLU of Idaho, which is representing the plaintiffs, called the ruling an awful result for transgender youth and their families. Today's ruling allows the state to shut down the care that thousands of families rely on while sowing further confusion and disruption, they wrote. Nonetheless, today's result only leaves us all the more determined to defeat this law in the courts entirely, making Idaho a safer state to raise every family. Justice Brett M. Kavanaugh, joined by Justice Amy Coney Barrett, wrote separately to say they agreed with the decision to temporarily block the lower court ruling while litigation continues. The court's 3 liberal justices objected to Monday's ruling, with Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson writing that the High Court should have resisted micromanaging the lower courts. Jackson, joined by Justice Sonia Sotomayor, added that the issue of gender-affirming medical care for transgender children is a serious and consequential matter, which indeed raises the profile of this case and the stakes of our intervention, for the law at issue here will have a significant practical impact on everyone it affects. Idaho Attorney General Raul R. Labrador praised Monday's ruling. Denying the basic truth that boys and girls are biologically different hurts our kids, Labrador said in a statement. No one has the right to harm children, and I'm grateful that we as a state have the power and duty to protect them. Nearly half the country has passed bans on gender transition care for minors, and most of those bans have wound up in court. Though several federal courts have blocked the bans from taking effect, 3 higher courts, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 6th Circuit in Cincinnati, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit in Atlanta, and the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit in Chicago, have allowed the bans to proceed. While those cases have centered around the constitutionality of the bans, Idaho's request is largely technical. In court filings, the state argued that the Supreme Court has never authorized universal injunctions, and some circuit courts even prohibit them. In legal filings, Idaho's lawyers argued that the plaintiffs have no right to seek a universal injunction because they are only affected by parts of the ban. Both teenagers testified in court documents that they once took puberty blockers and currently take estrogen. Neither is currently seeking a surgical intervention, and neither wants access to testosterone. Trans adolescents and their families have not filed for class action status, the lawyers argued, and should not be protected by the injunction. The plaintiffs both want access to a single procedure. The state's representatives wrote, but the injunction applies to all 20-plus procedures that the Vulnerable Child Protection Act regulates. Lawyers have tried to make similar
Okay, wow. Wow, everybody. I'm sorry. I didn't even know that it had stopped playing. Hey, Wellness. The thing of it is, they allow children and these LGBT people, based on giving them rights, saying if a child wakes up and they decide that they want to be a boy or girl, then, not considering these kids are minors, like, 11, 12, 13. What was Dwayne Wade's kid? What was they, 9 or 10 when they said this? So everybody jumped on the bandwagon like, oh, the kids can decide, I want to be a boy or a girl. And they went into full overdrive, passing laws, giving these kids puberty blockers, giving them hormones, everything. Some even messing with the kids' personal and private parts, having them removed. And then come to find out, when the kid gets older, it's like, no, this ain't what I really wanted. This was a phase. Everybody, please hit the like button, because there's some shows that I would like to have shared, and get them in the... Right, Dwayne Wade's son, that's why I had them up there. He was only 9 years old. 9 years old. And these people, you allowed them to get hormone shots, everything, and they were only children. Children. But glory, glory, hallelujah. People are saying, no. See, don't get it twisted. I do not hate those alphabet people. If that's what y'all want to do, that's what y'all want to do. But don't bring innocent kids into this, because you feel the way that you do. And you jump on a bandwagon and say, well, if a boy decides they want to be a girl, they should have a right. And they pass these laws. They pass these laws. But oh, glory, hallelujah. The power of prayer has been working, because this thing is turning around, where these kids, they gave these kids a right to change their sexual identity and use them as guinea pigs. And when they got of age, they wanted it to be reversed, and could nothing be done. How did we get to the point where we even allowed this to happen? And then you have couples like Dwayne Wade using his child as the poster child for this experimental stuff. Dwayne Wade, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. And you know the birth mother tried to take him to court to stop this. Said he shouldn't be able to make this decision until he was 18. Well, by now, laws was passed. And hey, if they wanted to do it, they went along with it. How did we even get to this point where this became so powerful that they were going to throw parents in jail? This is awful. But glory, glory, hallelujah. Somebody, the eyes of God been watching, or the higher power. They have been watching, and they like, enough is enough. Enough is enough. We done set up here and allow kids to make a decision on their sexual identity, and they were minors. These kids couldn't even vote. These kids hadn't even went on a date. These kids, they hadn't even cooked. They hadn't even been to Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. They hadn't even driven a car. They hadn't even made good grades. And so now they've got to go to court now to reverse all of this, because they allowed this to happen to minors. To minors, not adults. See, they didn't use the adults as guinea pigs. They used children as guinea pigs. Slowing down the process, giving them puberty blockers, then giving them hormones for them to grow breasts, and I mean just anything. They use these kids as guinea pigs. And some parents couldn't even do anything about it, because if they didn't go along with it, they were going to throw the parents in jail. So now the country is in an uproar because things that got so out of control, and they done figured out, oh my Lord, we were wrong. We done did this to kids, children. They used them as guinea pigs. Instead of saying, you know what? You were born a boy and you were born a girl. Now, let's find out. I know a lot of boys that played with dolls. I know a lot of girls that played with toy soldiers. I know tomboys, girls that they call tomboys. But back in my day, I couldn't imagine me telling my mother I wanted to change my sex to a boy. She would have had me locked up in the insane house. She wouldn't have been like, oh my goodness. First she would have said, what is wrong with you? Honey, they would have had everybody laying hands on me to get that bad spirit or demon out of me. Ain't no way I could never imagine my mother saying, Oh, it's okay, baby. Let me call the doctor. And they start transitioning me to a man. So they found out that most of these children was just kids. And it was a phase. You know, this was a phase with most of these kids. I want to be a girl. I want to be a boy. And I can do it. And y'all can't stop me. And then when they get grown, oh no, no, I want to go back to being a girl. This is wrong. What I did was wrong. I was messed up in the head. I was watching too much social media. You know, I was wrong. Take me back. Take me back. I want to be a woman. I want to have kids. And can't nothing be done about it. America let children be used as guinea pigs in research studies to be experimenting on different things that we shouldn't even be interfering with. We allow the American people in other places allow children to be mutilated, used as guinea pigs. Guinea pigs. Can you imagine, like us as women, when we go through menopause and stuff, or sometimes your hormones are off balance? They were given these hormone treatments for women. They were giving them to boys, experimenting to change them into girls. So all of these states now are trying to ban these puberty blockers. This is awful. So now they are saying, we want this stopped. We want it stopped now. It's not working. We want these blockers stopped. Hello, lovely. If you are for the children, I urge you to write your local senators and congressmen, congresswoman, and I need you to tell them that you want this stuff to be put in place, to stay in place. because this is awful what they have done to children. All the rights was taken from parents. They passed these laws so fast that you looked up that if the parents didn't agree, then they were going to jail the parents. How did we even get there? On a fad and on what other people wanted to happen. Basically, the only thing they wanted to do was use these kids as guinea pigs. And you had some sick, psychotic parents that went along with this because that was the end thing. Or it was a lot of money behind that community. They were giving these people plenty of money. They were making them the face. Look at what Dwayne Wade did to his son. Made them the face. They getting Vogue, everything. Everything, all type of contracts and money. And you have messed up your child. They were minor children. They passed a law for minor children to be used as guinea pigs. They passed the law so swift and move and fast, like people didn't even know what hit them. All you did was you looked up, and if you didn't allow your child to have these drugs, you could go to jail. You could go to jail. So you got the majority. Hold on for a minute. Hold on. For the interruption. So, you know, this whole thing is awful. So they said 68% of adults oppose access to puberty blocking medication for transgender children aged 10 to 14. And 58% oppose access to hormonal treatments for transgender kids aged 15 to 17. Hey, Buddha, y'all please hit that like button because it's some shows like this. This show, it hits home to me because I could remember saying, why do we have the waves? Their son is only 9 and they're going along with this bull crap of letting your kid be a guinea pig. They are children. Children. Yep. Family, pull your children out the public schools and take away their phones. It was a fad. A fad. And then they got so they wanted the transgender children. They would they were saying no, they can't compete in sports because they was a boy and now they done changed into a girl. Okay. What it was is it was these people, you know, these mad scientists that was like, okay, everybody, my kid, they said they wanted, my girl said they wanted to be a boy, or the boy said they wanted to be a girl. So I don't care. I'm going to let them have their way. Yes, I got my Cash App on top there in case anybody want to make a donation. And please share this show out. But I'm just so glad. Glory, glory, hallelujah. You know. And the thing of it is now people have to go to court to stop this ban. Ain't that something? People now have to go to court to stop it where kids would not receive these puberty blocker treatments and hormone treatments. They've got to go to court to get this reversed. Because you had some parents that allowed their kids to do this. Right till they was 18 years old. 18 years of age. 18 years. And this is just awful. It's awful that it came down to this. It's awful while we worrying about what religion somebody serves, what religion, or if you a Democrat or Republican, they were passing laws saying, oh, your kid woke up and said, I want to be a girl. Let me be a girl. I'm going to be a girl. And I'm going to take the treatment. Mhm. And they don't want to give people in pain prescription drugs, but you allow kids to be messed with. Most of these people that allowed this stuff to be passed, they found out had mental illness themselves. And most of them were part of that trans community. That's why it didn't bother them. So we need to really be side-eyeing Dwayne Wade. Why would you let your child make this type of decision? You let a child get their sex parts removed. I'm going to let y'all listen to another story.
This opinion piece was written by Megan McArdle. When treating transgender youth, how informed is informed consent? In the debate over transgender medicine for youths, two radically opposing views take up most of the airtime. People who support the currently dominant gender-affirming model of care for children see kind practitioners trying to do their best for vulnerable patients who often have severe mental health issues due to living in a transphobic society. Those who oppose this model see overconfident practitioners experimenting on these same vulnerable patients, many of whom might not be capable of giving truly informed consent for treatments such as
The parents is messed up. The parents was messed up. Hey, Selena, girl, glory, hallelujah. They waking up now and they're saying we are not allowing kids to make decisions on if they want to be a boy or girl now. They're saying it was a fad, something that started on social media. The parents had mental illness, and it was part of the alphabet people plan to use kids as guinea pigs, research. Allegedly. All of this is alleged. Because I don't have nothing against you people. Because you ain't got the answer to me. Leave the kids alone. Leave the children alone. Nobody should be able to make a decision like this until they're 18 years old. Leave the kids alone. And now they have to go to court to get all of these laws removed. and say, we ain't doing this to the kids no more. We're not giving them puberty blocking medicine. We're not giving them hormone medicine. And so glory, glory, hallelujah. Hey, Tony, because there is no way I could have told my mama I wanted to be a boy. And she said, okay, sweetie pie. And set up an appointment with the doctor and started the process. The kids, the children, our poor children, they just ain't got a chance in the world. My advice to parents nowadays is try to homeschool your kids, because it's too much. It's a doggone shame that it got this far. So in other countries, you know, the British, the UK, all of the earth, like, no, it's done. We ain't having it. We're not doing it. And anytime you sit up and let your child make this type of decision, you got to look at these parents. But glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Because when it got to a point when the birth mother of Zaya, Zeta, whatever they call them, tried to take Dwayne Wade to court and said she does not want her son to transition, and that type of decision should not be made until Zaya, whatever the name was, till they was 18. They didn't even listen to the mother. Like, So now all of a sudden, this is breaking news. This came out last week. Like the American College of Pediatricians. Like, they're like, So what they've done is they've all united. Cause see, they want to cut federal funding. People was getting federal funds to use your child or these children as guinea pigs for puberty blockers. A lot of people was paid. A lot of laws was put in place where the parents actually lost their rights. Like if a child said they wanted to transition and you didn't do it, they were taking the parents to court. My God help us. My God, my God. Save the children. Protect the children. So, I want to thank y'all for joining me for this show. I saw this a couple of days ago, and I was so glad. We've got to save the children by any cost, by any means necessary. And the thing of it is that I'm so upset about is it shouldn't have never went this far. It shouldn't have never went this far. Where kids were used as guinea pigs. Kids was given puberty blockers, hormones, and they were just kids. They were starting this stuff at the age of 9. If a kid said they wanted to be a girl or a boy, and the parents went right along with it, it shouldn't have never went that far. But y'all keep on thinking y'all gonna let all of these evil acts go on in the world. You gonna try some stuff. But let me tell you something. When them floodgates open up and them higher powers come together, them ancestors and everybody else get together and say enough is enough, like these people did, it ain't gonna be no stopping y'all. So the battle has started, and they have to go to different states. No child should have the right to change their gender until they're the age of 18. Not 9 or 10. And the parents that went along with it, they need to have mental health evaluations too. So all of these states now, you know, all these states are going in to get this banned. Because you have kids that are going back now and they are suing these states saying, my parents pushed this on me. I did not know what I was thinking. And I want to go back to being a boy, or I want to go back to being a girl. And it can't be reversed. They had gender surgeries. Now I'm going to let y'all listen to one article one last article of a person that's
This
against
news
this.
story was written by Molly Hennessy Fisk. Detransitioners wield influence in shaping conservative transgender laws. Austin. At 25, college student Prisha Mosley doesn't consider herself conservative. She was raised a leftist my whole life and quite radical at times. She has face piercings, dyes her hair bright red, supports same-sex marriage, abortion rights, and gun control, and rejects gender stereotypes. But several life-changing decisions forever shaped how others see her. In her teens, Mosley transitioned from female to male. Last year, she detransitioned and joined forces with conservative activists, fighting to ban the gender-affirming care she had received. Mosley is among more than a dozen detransitioners who have gained prominence this year, suing the doctors and clinics from which they received care in more than half a dozen states, headlining conservative events and starring in documentaries often sponsored by right-wing groups. Some have testified for restrictions on gender-affirming care for minors. At least 22 states, most run by Republicans, have passed such restrictions this year. To state legislatures and conferences, the detransitioners have offered themselves up as evidence of what they say are the risks and consequences of gender-affirming care, even though it has been endorsed by the nation's largest medical groups, including the American Medical Association. Mosley said she has paid a price for her entry into politics. After she began publicly testifying for nearly a dozen proposed laws in Texas and other red states, she said she was chased to her car by opponents, had things thrown at her, and received death threats. She has become estranged from former LGBTQ+ allies, even though she shares many of their views on other issues. They treat me like a betrayer, Mosley said. While Mosley said she has been treated compassionately and humanely by conservatives, defying stereotypes she once held, she still doesn't fully identify with them either. She feels politically homeless, longing to be seen and heard in all her complexity. She advocates for extreme limits on gender-affirming care, but sees herself as a moderate. Indeed, like Mosley, most Americans oppose medication and hormone treatments for minors and say gender is determined at birth, a Washington Post poll conducted a year ago found. I no longer politically align with any party's ideas, she said. I've been forced to learn the value of the middle ground. She just has to find it. A small minority gains prominence. On social media sites, detransitioners often mark their profiles with the icon of a salamander, an animal that regenerates lost body parts. More than 50,000 users have joined a Reddit detrans discussion channel, although it's impossible to verify how many members are detransitioners. There's much debate about how many Americans have detransitioned. Perhaps 1.6 million people aged 13 or older in the United States identify as transgender, according to a survey by the UCLA School of Law's Williams Institute. Less than a third of people who consider themselves transgender have used hormone treatments or puberty blockers, and only about 1 in 6 have undergone gender-affirming surgery, the Washington Post KFF poll found. Fewer still have sought to reverse those actions. But as conservatives have mounted a concerted effort to limit trans and gay rights, particularly in red state legislatures, a small minority of detransitioners like Mosley have gained prominence. It was late summer, and Mosley had traveled from her home in Michigan to Texas to join female activists planning a protest at the state capitol during Austin's annual Pride celebration. The activists were there to prevent expansion of transgender rights and support a proposed state law that would define and limit a person's gender in vital documents to what it was at birth, male or female. They were lobbying lawmakers to consider the bill during a special legislative session. Earlier in the year, Kansas's Republican-controlled legislature overrode the Democratic governor's veto to pass a similar law that took effect in July. At an Austin hotel, they met to talk security and strategy. There was Laura Becker, a detransitioner from Wisconsin whom Mosley knew, as well as conservative women, left-leaning feminists, and at least one lesbian. Their political affiliations were all over the map, but what united them, they said, was the fear that the movement for transgender rights was threatening to erase not just the term women, but also women's rights and spaces. They carried signs reading, "Biology isn't bigotry," "Being a woman is not a hate crime," and "Gender identity is a lie." A lesbian activist wore a t-shirt that said LGB Alliance without the T for transgender. Mosley was greeted by the leader of the protest, Republican activist Michelle Evans, who ran unsuccessfully for a Texas State House seat last year. Evans has championed bans on LGBTQ plus books and transgender access to women's sports and bathrooms. Mosley said she mostly agreed with Evans on those issues. She said that she had seen some of the books Evans opposed that were graphic and inappropriate for children, that there are safety issues that arise when individuals of the opposite sex use the same bathroom, and that it was unfair and unsafe for biological males to participate in women's sports. At the same time, I believe trans-identifying people shouldn't be excluded from society, Mosley said, adding that, for instance, they should be allowed to compete in sports against one another. "I believe that everyone should be treated with respect and compassion," she said. "It is disrespectful and lacking in compassion to contend that individuals who do not conform to gender stereotypes must undergo harmful medical procedures to try to become a member of the opposite sex." Evans wore a Female Lives Matter t-shirt and a handgun in a purple holster clipped to her waist. She introduced the group's security, armed guards in black tactical gear plus volunteers from a Texas motorcycle club, some carrying AR-15s. They strategized about how to approach the Capitol by car, where to park several blocks away, how to stand ringed by security, and how to act with counter-protesters, non-confrontational. As she arrived at the Capitol, Mosley could see the oak tree where they planned to protest. Next to it, about 100 people hoisted rainbow signs and shouted, "Trans rights are human rights!" Two carried AR-15s, including a man in a tactical vest with a rainbow patch. Mosley has lived in gun-friendly states. Still, she was unnerved by the weaponry. A half-dozen state troopers, some on horseback, patrolled in the sweltering heat. Mosley strapped on a borrowed GoPro camera. If anyone approached, she said, she would be filming. Mosley adjusted the harness over her baby blue flowered sundress. "I feel safer," she said. A change of views and a lawsuit. As a teen, Mosley began to suffer from anorexia, anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts. At 14, she said she was sexually assaulted, became pregnant, and suffered a miscarriage. "I believed that it was a woman's place to be sexually harmed by men, that it was natural," she said. By 15, she started role-playing online as a man, unbeknownst to her parents. The idea of physically transitioning came from online friends who told her that her anorexia was caused by being born in the wrong body, and that I was really a boy, she said. Mosley said she saw doctors and therapists who diagnosed her with gender dysphoria. Her father, a carpenter, and her mother, a homemaker, initially opposed her transition, she said, but ultimately supported me as their child. "It was clear to me and my family that something was wrong and I needed help," she said. In hindsight, she said, her parents were misled by doctors and therapists. At 16, doctors prescribed Mosley injections to stop her from menstruating. At 17, they prescribed testosterone that led her to grow body and facial hair. At 18, at her request, surgeons removed her breasts. Mosley began to identify publicly as Charlie, changing her driver's license and other official identification. In the first few years after she transitioned, Mosley said, she felt satisfied. She moved in with like-minded LGBTQ+ roommates in Florida, but the relief proved to be temporary. While Mosley had therapy before transitioning, she said it was only in post-transition sessions that she realized all of the magic that was supposed to happen when I transitioned, the healing and the euphoria, actually happened from healing my trauma, from sexual assault and other childhood issues. Last fall, she decided to detransition. She stopped taking hormones, identified once again as a woman, and began speaking out against transgender medical treatment for minors. She has started taking estrogen and progesterone, undergone laser hair removal on her face and chest, and raised money on GoFundMe for breast reconstruction. I decided that I didn't want to be a woman before I had ever experienced being a woman. I had no idea what being a woman was like because I was a child. Now I feel like I will never entirely know, she said in the first of a series of YouTube video diaries that drew more than 1,750 subscribers. She started to cry. I just took the cure that was handed to me, she said through sobs. I just don't want anyone else to feel this way. I lost my voice. I lost my chest. I don't know if I'm going to be able to have kids. I feel like no one wants to date me or love me because I'm ruined. The video has been viewed about 16,000 times and elicited more than 380 mostly supportive comments. Some parents of transgender children contacted Mosley to say their children had suffered after transitioning, she said, inspiring her to testify for laws restricting gender-affirming care for minors. They heard my pain and shared theirs, Mosley told the Post. While she was afraid to testify at first, I continued to tell myself that it was scarier to let this happen to another child. In July, she sued the North Carolina doctors, therapists, and clinics that provided her with surgery, hormones, and other gender-affirming care, alleging fraud and malpractice. The Dallas-based law firm representing her has filed 3 other lawsuits in the past year on behalf of detransitioners it calls individual doctors and therapists, denied those claims and asked a judge to dismiss her lawsuit due to what they said was a lack of evidence and an expired statute of limitations. In a court filing, they argued that Mosley passed mental health screening and that she pursued hormones and surgery even after being informed of the risks. Sarah Lincoln, the Charlotte-based attorney representing those Mosley sued, said via staff this week that she had no comment about the lawsuit. With her lawsuit pending, Mosley has become a more prominent witness for Republicans seeking to ban gender-affirming care. They credit her and other detransitioners with helping the measures succeed. My body feels like it doesn't belong to me. I miss it every day, Mosley testified last month in Ohio before a state legislative committee considering a law to restrict gender-affirming care. Legislation preventing children from undergoing such life-altering procedures could have protected me. She shared similar details with lawmakers in Florida, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, Tennessee, Texas, North Carolina, and South Carolina. All except Maine and South Carolina approved the laws she supported banning gender-affirming care for minors. Maine ultimately passed a law to allow transgender youths age 16 and over who had been diagnosed with gender dysphoria to receive medically necessary health care. Mosley said some private groups assisted her financially when she traveled to testify. In North Carolina, State Representative Ken Fontenot, Republican, an educator, pastor, and co-sponsor of the ban on gender-affirming care, met with Mosley and other detransitioners before the law passed. All of their stories I found really striking, he said. They were very, very influential with some of the lawmakers we got to side with us and in the end not oppose us as vociferously. Folks do get very emotional about it. Texas State Rep. Sean Terry, a Houston Democrat and the first Black woman elected to her House seat, said meeting several Texas-based detransitioners was her first taste of the vitriol directed at them by activists supporting transgender rights. They have every right to share their experience, she said. As Democrats, that's been one of the biggest parts of our platform. We don't tell marginalized groups how to think, feel, and speak. Thierry was one of 4 Texas Democrats who voted to ban gender-affirming care for minors last spring. But she became the focus of a backlash after delivering a floor speech in support of the law. Her office was inundated with complaints, Thierry said, and she was harassed online. I've had racial epithets hurled at me, death threats, people telling me on Mother's Day they hope my daughter wakes up an orphan, she said. Rachel Hill, Government Affairs Director for Equality Texas, an LGBTQ++ advocacy group that fought the law, said at least one detransitioner wrote to Texas lawmakers opposing it. But those comments weren't highlighted by the bill's sponsors, Hill said, because The voices of detransitioners that get the most amplification are a really cherry-picked group. They find folks who have had a really bad experience with care, like Mosley, Hill said. And it's unfortunate because there are so many other folks who, for whatever reason, stop care and don't have the same political agenda. While some LGBTQ++ people feel threatened by detransitioners like Mosley who want to restrict gender-affirming care, Hill said, many view other detransitioners with more nuance. I don't think the community is against detransitioners as a whole, Hill said, just those who are advocating for their care to be taken away. Folks do get very emotional about it. A delusion or hateful speech. The next front for Mosley and conservative lawmakers is a battle to restrict transgender rights not just for minors, but also for adults, which Mosley was when she underwent surgery. In October, 18 state attorneys general submitted a brief in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit in defense of Florida, blocking state Medicaid programs from covering gender-affirming care for adults and minors. Those impacted by the ban had sued in federal court, and after a judge ruled in their favor this summer, the state appealed. Mosley said she is doing what she can to press for such restrictions, and ultimately thinks states should outlaw all transitioning. The goal of medicine is health, and I do not believe gender-affirming care promotes health, she said. It is only damaging. As she testified in South Carolina's legislature earlier this year, Mosley sees gender-affirming treatment as akin to lobotomies, once used for mental health treatment and now disdained as inhumane. Mosley told the Post that she supports government efforts to expand mental health care instead of gender-affirming care, so that individuals suffering from gender dysphoria can have something to reach toward that doesn't make their condition worse. Whatever the child is experiencing is real, such as mental illness, gender dysphoria, thoughts of suicide. Those feelings should be validated, Mosley said. The trans delusion, however, is not true. A child cannot become the opposite sex. The delusion that a child could change his or her gender shouldn't be affirmed. Those Mosley is lobbying against include Sophia Sepulveda, who said calling transgender people mentally ill and likening gender-affirming care to lobotomies was hateful rhetoric. It literally takes me back to when I was little and I lived in a family that wasn't affirming, who every time I tried to express myself, they would hit me and punish me, said Sepulveda, 47, of San Antonio, who started taking hormones at 21 and had transition surgery 2 years ago. Sepulveda protested the Texas law and heard some of Mosley's testimony. She said that when detransitioners try to restrict transgender rights, what I hear is a lot of internalized transphobia. Republicans are not our friends, not when you're trans, when you're queer, when you're black, when you're a woman. She said, you're not protected, but they can't see that. Listen to detransitioners. By the time Mosley and her fellow activists arrived at the Capitol in Austin, the Pride event was well underway, with thousands lining the streets. The group's security formed a tight perimeter around her. Supporters raised their cell phones to live stream her remarks. Mosley was nervous. She had printed out her speech and she held the paper in front of her as she stepped to the microphone. Me. I tried, she said evenly. Mosley could barely be heard over LGBTQ plus activists' chants. Trans rights are human rights. It is impossible to change your sex. I removed my breasts and I took testosterone for years and I am still a woman. I always was, Mosley said. Finished with her speech, Mosley overrode the advice of her security team. She walked past the guards toward the transgender rights advocates. Despite the crowd, the heat, and the guns, she said later, she wanted the other side to hear her. She approached a white woman wearing an I Support Black Trans Futures t-shirt and holding a sign that said, Trans rights are human rights. Mosley held up her own sign, Listen to detransitioners. Her hands were no longer shaking. After several moments of shouting back and forth, Mosley walked away. There was no middle ground, but she had her say.
And there you have it. A lady that transition that transition to a man. And you know, you go in and hey, all you gotta do is have one person that says, hey, we want to talk about a sex change or you got gender dysphoria. They not saying wait until they change their sex or anything till they're 18. They immediately started on this child. So you have it. No matter what they do, no matter what the people say, if you was born a girl or a boy, that's what you gonna be anyway, no matter what they do to you. Y'all better stop playing with the higher power. Y'all better stop playing. You better stop playing. I want to thank y'all, for listening to this show. Please hit the like button. Share it out. Transitioning, it does not work. Everybody's coming out now against it. Children are confused at a young age. It was a fad. It was just thoughts from people that thinking if I change my gender that I'll be okay, and it didn't work that way. It didn't work. And so I want to thank y'all all for joining me. So let this be known. Spread the word that you can't mess with what you was born with. You can't do it. You just can't do it. No matter what them people do to you, whatever they give you. If you was born a boy and if you was born a girl, that's what you will always be. And so an agenda got pushed because that's what people was trying to push. To be able to use kids as guinea pigs. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. Leave the children alone. This is April Showers. Please share this show out. And I really appreciate it. Like I said, I'm trying to stay up on all the latest information to give y'all. We in spiritual warfare out here. Protect these children at all costs. Save our children. I plan on living to be 100 years old. And I don't want no kid taking care of me and they on more Xanax in medicine than I'm on. Y'all have a great day, and thanks for joining me this afternoon. Thank you.